Hello everyone. As for the current IT market, the DevOps domain is one of the best domains for IT folks in terms of salary and career growth. That's not a vague statement at all. According to the Glassdoor's ranking of top 50 jobs in the IT industry, DevOps does stand as the second most lucrative career domain. And today we are going to unscrew all the nuts and bolts of this lucrative IT domain. The domain which is yet difficult to comprehend and has huge complexity associated with it. But before we begin with that, make sure you guys subscribe to our Intellipaat YouTube channel and enable that bell icon as well so that you never miss any update from us. First of all, let us look into the agenda for this session. We'll begin this session on a friendly note where we'll get introduced to the notion of DevOps. Then we'll look into the different career options that DevOps domain has to offer. And finally, we'll look into the strategy to make a career in DevOps discipline. I hope the agenda is clear to all of you guys out there.
So without any further ado, let's get started with the first topic of this session, that is what actually this term DevOps is all about. Well, DevOps is a linchpin role that holds software development and operations together. And it's not that old actually. The DevOps movement began around 2007 when the software development and IT operation communities raised concern about the traditional software development model. The concern that developers who wrote code worked apart from operations who deployed and supported the code. Then the term DevOps was coined as a combination of word development and operations, reflecting the process of integrating both the disciplines into one continuous process. DevOps is a relatively new practice, as you have just heard. However, it was born out of a grave organizational necessity to combat the catastrophic levels of dysfunction that were present throughout the IT sector. You may be wondering what the dysfunction was. Well, it was just the fact that the software development and deployment teams were completely apart from each other, and the distance led to issues down the line that seemed to affect every part of IT operations negatively. DevOps thus arose from needing continuous integration industry wide. You can probably tell, but this phenomena of left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing is hell for an organization, and even more so when both teams sometimes seem to have competing or outright contradictory objectives. This is precisely the niche that DevOps came to fill. But wait, does that filling gap is the only thing DevOps seek? Well, no. In current times, DevOps also seeks the automation of whole continuous integration process. Now it is defined as a practice that automates and integrates the process between software development and IT teams. DevOps tries to prevent essentially what's called as organizational siloing. In other words, it's meant to prevent teams working in secluded little islands that don't interact much with each other. And this fosters an environment of collaboration rather than sectarian competition and one upmanship. In some cases, even the teams are merged in order to maximize efficiency with engineers working throughout the product or app lifecycle. Of course, in order to handle these diverse events, they are often needed to have a large wide range of skills. Gone are the days of engineers that had just one hyper specialized skills and worked on it with blinders on. Now it's all about peripheral vision. Now we are in the age of interdisciplinary work. Furthermore, DevOps enable teams tend to use every tool at their disposal in order to automate and facilitate processes. As such, they tend to have more time to utilize their high level skills where they are needed. And as a much needed plus point, they don't just accelerate processes but make them much less prone to errors. Not only that, but much like IT asset management, DevOps values sometimes can apply beyond the borders of software development and implementation. Good practices are good practices after all, right? Security teams, for instance, can adopt DevOps modalities or even be actively integrated into the development process. When this happens, it's an area called as DevSecOps. The two important facets that DevOps brings to the software development lifecycle are continuous integration and continuous delivery. Continuous integration is basically a software development practice where developers merge every code change they do into a single repository. It's here where automated builds and tests are run. The goal behind this practice is to find bugs quicker and stamp out issues before they become widespread or reach implementation in the first place. If things go well, then the time it takes to release and update software decreases significantly. Whereas continuous delivery is about implementing code changes that are automatically built, tested, and prepared for release to production. As such, you can consider it an expansion to continuous integration because it hinges upon deploying all code changes to a testing or production environment following the build stage. If done right, at the end, developers will have prime time ready builds that have already been tested adequately, always at their disposal. I hope now you guys are clear with the basic DevOps lingo. Now, moving forward, let's take a deep dive into the career prospects this field has to offer. According to a joint study conducted by Linux Foundation and job site Dice, 60% of hiring managers are still looking out to fill DevOps professional positions at their firms. But when I use term DevOps professionals, I don't just mean one specific job role. Actually, since DevOps involves such a vast array of tools and techniques, the responsibilities are broadly categorized into the 7 job descriptions or roles. Let's look at them one by one. First one we have is DevOps engineer. DevOps engineer is also known as a platform engineer and is responsible for managing and supporting the platform utilized for DevOps operations. Some companies treat DevOps as more of a process and an ideology rather than a platform, so they may not hire a DevOps engineer. However, this authoritative and supportive role is kind of important when it comes to software development. Well, coming to the ground, this role is not actually meant for beginners. A qualified candidate for a DevOps engineer position has few years of experience in DevOps, familiarity with the platform available and how to integrate them into existing business processes, alongside some management experience on the back. The average salary for a DevOps engineer tends to be just around $100,000 mark, with talented and experienced DevOps engineers making 150,000 US dollars or more. And if we talk in the context of India, the average salary lies around 10 lakh rupees, which could go up to as high as 30 lakh rupees. Next role we have is DevOps evangelist. There are many companies already devoted to the DevOps lifestyle. Many more, however, are not. These companies need a DevOps evangelist to guide them on the path. The evangelist can be either a consultant or an employee, and they typically hold an upper level position. Because of that, this role needs authority, and their goal is to develop a plan for DevOps implementation and convince those in charge of how much better life will be if that plan is implemented. To get into this role, one needs to be good at compiling and presenting data. You must also have deep familiarity with the DevOps processes, platforms, and systems. These people are the ones who come up with a plan for conversion and often the ones who see through the implementation. However, most of the time this job remains as a consultant, so salary ranges are not so comprehensive. According to the pay scale, the salary for evangelist ranges between 55,000 to 81,000 US dollars, whereas in India it averages between 8 to 12 lakh rupees. Then comes the third one, build engineer. The build engineer is a DevOps managerial position. This particular person will be in charge of development teams. He will be overseeing the build and development processes and making sure that deadlines and goals are reached in a hectic setting. They oversee the management of code, upkeep and creation of builds, the management and deployment of automation tools, and the assurance that builds adhere to the predetermined configuration specifications. According to Glassdoor, average salary for this role is around 10 lakh rupees in India, which could vary up to 16 lakh rupees, and in context of US market, it ranges between 60,000 US dollars to 110,000 US dollars. Next up, we have release engineer. If the build engineer is the back of the coin, the release manager is the front. The release manager is an oversight and managerial position that oversees the overall development pipeline, guiding both individual releases and overall release schedules. They spend much of their time coordinating with the build engineer and with other teams to ensure that their goals are met. As a mid to upper level management position, release managers in the USA average around 120,000 to 140,000 per year, with higher level managers reaching 170,000 or more. Similarly, in India, it ranges between 10 lakh to 28 lakh rupees. Fifth role we have is automation architect. The automation architect is responsible not just for researching and implementing automation systems, but for integrating those systems with other existing automation and non automation systems. Their job isn't simply to implement automation but to ensure everything works with as few obstacles as possible, graceful failure states, and redundancy as necessary. Essentially, they pave the road so the rest of the team can drive quickly and safely on it. Next role we have on our list is product manager. Product manager is not a new role, it's an operation role repurposed within DevOps. As such, there will be a large volume of product managers willing to apply who might not meet the DevOps philosophy. The goal is to find a product manager with management skills but also with deep collaboration abilities that allow them to work directly with your development teams. In particular, they'll need to work with build and release managers, the security engineers, and the data analysts to maintain a full big picture overview of your product. The salary for both automation architect and product manager average around 18 lakh to 35 lakh rupees in India, whereas in US market it lies between 155 to 200,000 US dollars. Finally, we have DevOps software developer. The role of software developer is crucial for any software focused company, but it's even more important for a DevOps team. In DevOps, a software developer is not just responsible for developing code, they also test, deploy, monitor, and support that very same code. The role is, in essence, a combination of both the software development and the quality analyst roles. DevOps software developers need to be fluent in coding and software development, but also in DevOps practices for quality analysis and maintenance. This often means a reliance on automated testing applications. Thus, a DevOps software developer needs to know and understand these applications clearly. The salary for this role lies in the range of 120,000 to 140,000 US dollars in USA, and in India it lies between 10 to 25 lakh rupees. I hope the basic work structure for these 7 job roles is clear to all of you. However, let me tell you guys that there are more DevOps roles available out there, such as security engineer, data analyst, etc. But the roles we just talked about do form the core foundation for DevOps. That being said, let's look into the strategy to build a career in DevOps. You must understand the fact that DevOps is not specific to developers or system engineers. It's for anyone passionate about evolving practices and technologies and willing to work in a collaborative environment where everything is automated to make everyone's life easy. It doesn't matter whether you are a system admin, developer, tester, performance engineer, or even a support engineer. You can be a DevOps engineer because you are already part of an IT ecosystem that is responsible for deploying and managing applications to production. The first step that you can take towards entering into DevOps is contemplate the DevOps culture. To become DevOps engineer, the first and foremost thing is to understand the culture. It is all about different teams working together towards a common goal. In other words, there should not be any blaming culture between different IT teams. For example, if you are a DevOps engineer, never say it's not my job. Say, let me see what I can do to help. How you respond has a significant impact on collaboration. It doesn't mean you have to spoon feed people and do others' work. IT leaders and decision makers should ensure the entire team is mentored on DevOps cultural aspects before getting into DevOps toolset. It avoids lot of confusion in the teams. It usually doesn't happen in organization and they end up having a DevOps team for operations which again ends up in a siloed structure. People would stop hiding the truth and stop blaming others for project issues once they understand that an issue in project delivery has to be addressed in a collaborative manner rather than pointing fingers. Once you take a deep dive into the DevOps culture, you would stop saying that CI/CD and infrastructure automation is all that DevOps is all about. You would see it as a philosophy. We are in an era where we cannot live without Linux or Unix systems, especially when you are part of software development, testing, and deployment teams. That is why every college institution introduces Linux to its students. But maximum number of students forget all about it by the time placements arrive. Hence, we suggest you to get better understanding and working knowledge of various Linux distributions before you move ahead with more core DevOps stuff. As per the Linux Foundation case study, 90% of the public cloud workload runs on Linux, and this statement itself should be enough reason for you to focus on studying Linux. Put AWS, Azure, or GCP to use and spin up those Linux servers. You can learn the Linux concepts that are highlighted on the screen here, which are like bread and butter for DevOps people. First one is Linux booting process, then comes installing and configuring web servers such as Nginx, Tomcat or Apache, learning how Linux processes, SSH, systemmd works and file systems as well. After that, take a thorough look at system logging, troubleshooting and monitoring. Learn about important protocols such as SSL, TLS, TCP, UDP, FTP, SSH and many more. Host static or dynamic website on web servers and play around with different configuration. Understand the difference between a load balancer and a reverse proxy. Set up load balancers and reverse proxies on Nginx or HA proxy, etc. Understand each configuration and algorithm behind load balancing. For ninth, we have learned to optimize Linux performance and set up database and understand its configuration and management. You can use PostgreSQL setup for this purpose as well. Then finally break something and learn to troubleshoot it. All of these things will help you understand how Linux can help you throughout DevOps lifecycle. Alright, that being said, let's move to the next step of our strategy, that is learning how infrastructure components work. The basic building block of any organization is its infrastructure. It could be either on the cloud or on-premise data center. And to be able to get aboard DevOps teams, it is crucial thing to know about as well. For example, when you get into meetings with network or security teams, with a fair amount of infrastructure knowledge, you can ask the right questions, understand what they are saying and collaborate better. Other way around, if you are unaware about infrastructure, collaborating with them will become quite a difficult task. There is a big difference when you say it's not working, can you look into this? And hey, I have done my initial troubleshooting and here are my findings. Can you look into this further and help us understand what's causing the issue, right? Next up, we have step where we want you to learn a few back-end programming languages. Programming skills are a must for DevOps because without them, you won't be able to integrate databases or automate development and deployment processes. Debugging databases, debugging code, and fixing issues, all that requires programming skills in your hand. If you are looking to launch your career into DevOps, we believe that you must be proficient in at least one of the big programming languages such as Python, Java, or JavaScript. If you are not, we recommend you to at least develop proficiency in 2 or 3 programming languages. Following that, we have a fifth step where you are supposed to learn all about container orchestration and distributed systems. Guys, distributed systems are the basic building blocks for modern scalable infrastructure. You need to understand the basic concept of distributed systems because most tools that you use for microservices are distributed in nature. For example, Kubernetes. Also, container adoption is increasing day by day. The organization you work for might not be using containers right now. However, it is best to have hands-on knowledge about container technology like Docker or Podman. It will gain you some competitive edge among your peers. Once you understand Docker, you can start learning about container orchestration tools like Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, etc. These platforms are best suited for microservices based architecture. Also, there is a concept of service mesh. It is an advanced topic in the container space. If you are a beginner to container toolset, you can learn this after gaining a good amount of knowledge in container orchestration and microservices based architecture. Next step of our strategy is observability, logging, and monitoring. These things are fundamental aspects of infrastructures. All apps deployed in the infrastructure will produce logs and metrics. Logs are pushed and stored in logging infrastructure based on architecture and design. Every company would have a logging and monitoring infrastructure. Commonly used logging stacks are Splunk and ELK. Also, there are few SaaS companies like Logi which provide logging infrastructure. For monitoring, there are open source tools like Prometheus and Nagios. Being into DevOps, being in positions of developers, operation teams, or security teams, you'll be using logging systems to monitor, troubleshoot, and audit applications and infrastructure. Also, for AIOps, log data plays a key role. In every organization, mission critical applications are monitored 24 by 7 using monitoring dashboards. Generally, dashboards use data from logging sources or metrics generated by the application. Also, there would be alerting system that use the rules configured in the monitoring systems for alerting. For example, an alert could be triggered as a Slack notification, Jira ticket, email alert, or ServiceNow incident ticket, or Xmatters phone call as well. Alerting workflows differ from organization to organization. As a DevOps engineer, you should be able to query logs and troubleshoot issues in non-prod or prod environments. Understanding regular expressions is very important to query logs in any logging tool. Final step we have here is master continuous integration and continuous delivery tools. As mentioned earlier, continuous integration and delivery pipeline is essential in software development using DevOps approach. Basically, guys, continuous integration is a software development practice where developers merge every code change they do into a single repository. Whereas, on the other hand, continuous delivery is a term related to implementing code changes that are automatically built, tested, and prepared for a production release. Some of the commonly used tools that you can put to use for this purpose are GitHub, Travis CI, GitLab, Bamboo, Azure DevOps, and Jenkins. Also, to contemplate the field of such vastness, a well tailored training program will be the better op to choose. While the internet is full of wonderful and free resources, it won't give you the structured approach or the hands on practice that you need. If you want to become an employable DevOps professional, the most effective way to do so is through a specialized program or course. Intellipaat does provide state of the art certification that is designed according to different sets of industry standards, and it can definitely act as a ladder for your career change with an exciting salary hike. So visit the website and start exploring. That being said, I wish you good luck on your DevOps journey. I hope these steps will help you plan your learning schedule. That's all we have for this video. I hope this video was informative for all of you guys out there willing to take your career to new heights with DevOps. Thank you for being here till the end of this video. If you have liked the content covered in this video, a thumbs up would be really appreciated. Also, don't forget to enable subscribe button to never miss any update from Intellipaat YouTube channel.
Just a quick info guys, if you want to make a career in cloud computing, then Intellipaat provides an advanced certification on cloud and DevOps by IIT Madras. This course is taught by industry experts and IIT Madras faculty. This course is designed to upskill and land your dream job.